UN News.
Recently, Collin, they gave out the Nobel Peace Prize, also known as the War's Peace Prize, because seemingly they only give it to people who are capable of bombing 7 countries and whatnot anymore. They don't give it to like other nominees like Dr. Hassam Abu Safia or even Greta Thunberg was nominated, I do believe. Plenty of others were in the mix, right? Trump, I think himself was in the mix, wasn't he? Didn't BB?
Yes.
BB put him in? Fucking
right.
idiocy.
Which I would argue was probably the marketing behind this ceasefire deal.
Peace deal, right. So, yeah. So he's from Robert Inlakesh, right? Writing in the Palestinian Chronicle, who writes the pro-war Nobel Peace Prize winner is a friend of Netanyahu and apparently of the WEF. Funny how that works. So Venezuelan opposition figure Maria Corina Machado has been named by the Norwegian Nobel Committee as the Nobel Peace Prize winner of 2025, a title which U.S. President Donald Trump had hoped to receive after being nominated by Netanyahu. The 58-year-old's victory was announced in Oslo this Friday with a statement by the prize committee stating that the award was presented to Machado for her tireless work promoting democratic rights for the people of Venezuela and for her struggle to achieve a just and peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy. So clearly Oslo's got a fucking agenda, don't it? Fiorella Isabel, everyone knows that the unstated requirement to win a Nobel Peace Prize is to be a puppet of the empire or a war criminal, a fine accomplishment in our psychopathically ruled society. Congrats to Maria Corina Machado for cementing yourself as a failed tool of Yankee imperialism. Hassan Mafi, the Nobel Peace Prize, isn't political. Also, recent Nobel Peace Prize winners in 2021, Dmitry Muratov, Russian opposition. 2022, Ales Biladsky, Belarusian opposition. 2023, Narges Mohammadi, an Iranian opposition. In 2025, Maria Corina, Venezuelan opposition. So, as well as people like Obama, you know, getting his, right? That sort of thing. So, the Venezuelan opposition leader who was barred from running in the last round of elections over allegations of alleged corruption and support for U.S. sanctions on the country is, however, not an advocate of peaceful transition. Instead, she has openly advocated for regime change to be thrust upon her country by foreign powers. Machado was also a supporter of U.S. sanctions against Venezuela, while her policy platform is of the far-right persuasion and advocates for the total privatization of state assets, most notably the country's oil reserves. So, look who she's talking to here. Everyone knows this fucking idiot, right? That's fucking, what is it? Kushner? You know, Trump Jr.? This fucking dude, yeah. You know, luckily Rumble gets to platform him. Isn't that nice? Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado told Trump Jr. that she plans to privatize Venezuelan industries. So we'll let her spit out this nonsense.
About Saudi Arabia. Forget about the Saudis. I mean, we have more oil. I mean, infinite potential. And we're going to open markets. We're going to kick off the government from the oil sector. We are going to privatize all our industries. Venezuela has huge resources, oil, gas, minerals, land, technology. And as you said before, we have a strategic location, hours from the United States. So we're going to do this right. We know what we have to do. And American companies are in, super strategic position to invest. This country, Venezuela, is going to be the brightest opportunity for investment of American companies, of good people that are going to make a lot of money.
Any questions? No. Standard fucking capitalism.
Capitalism. Yep.
So, but we'll keep going. We got President Donald Trump has eyed the Nobel Peace Prize, suggesting he should win it over with what he claims is a historic achievement of ending 8 wars. Much of the pushback against the American leader came due to his right-wing policies and aggressive foreign policy, which included attacking Iran. In addition to this, the U.S. has now mobilized its Navy and is threatening military intervention to unseat the current government in Caracas. Nobel Peace Prize winner Machado is an ally of the Trump movement and has shared platforms with hardline right-wing groups, including neo-Nazis. So, yeah, standard shit for right-wingers at this point. So, here's Manolo de los Santos. The Nobel Peace Prize was just awarded to Machado, a woman who publicly endorsed Trump's plan for U.S. military invasion of Venezuela and supported the extrajudicial killing of Venezuelans by a U.S. naval force. This is what the committee now calls peace. She totally supports his strategy, and I've said on behalf of the Venezuelan people that I'm very grateful. I think it's the right thing to do. It's courageous, it's visionary, but attacking a speedboat, killing citizens, I'm in favor of the U.S. dismantling this criminal structure. So there's that. She also once wrote to Israeli war criminal Netanyahu and asked him to help to overthrow Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro. In 2025, you get a Nobel Peace Prize for trying to convince a foreign genocidal apartheid state to attack your own country and overthrow its leadership so that Washington can privatize its largest natural oil reserves on Earth. Any questions? Any questions for the chat? How this is working? No? Okay. So, notably, Machado is a staunch supporter of Israel and maintains close ties to the Likud party. Back in 2018, she even wrote a letter to Prime Minister Netanyahu calling upon him and others to wage a regime change operation to overthrow the socialist government of Maduro. The following is an excerpt for that letter. It should be noted that it is not only our population that is suffering the widespread and systematic attack of the current regime, its criminal nature, closely linked to drug trafficking and terrorism, represents a real threat to other countries, including and especially Israel. The current regime, which holds the power of government hostage in Venezuela, exhibits its close collaboration with Iran and extremist groups, which, as we all know, pose a threat to Israel. So you could see why she's getting this shit. So Machado has also appeared on Israeli television to advocate for the reestablishment of ties between Venezuela and Israel, even vowing that under her leadership, the embassy would be moved to occupy Jerusalem. She also put out a video thanking former U.S.-backed Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido for recognizing Israel's capital as occupied Jerusalem. In 2020, Machado signed a cooperation agreement with Netanyahu, Likud's party, on political ideology and social issues, as well as advancing on issues related to strategy, geopolitics, and security. And I imagine the, brown native people of Venezuela probably aren't down with this. I'm betting,
right.
Like earlier this year, Machado participated alongside her Likud party allies in the ultra-nationalist Patriots for Europe summit, where both sold themselves as frontline warriors in the battle for Western civilization. One of the most prominent slogans at the right-wing conference was Reconquista, referencing European military efforts to expel Islamic influence, which included the mass forced conversion of Muslim and Jews to Christianity. Literally the fucking Crusades, amidst the slaughter and displacement of civilians to achieve this goal. Nice. Nice, isn't that nice? Understanding that Machado is an ardent supporter of Israel's genocide and stands with it in its implementation of apartheid policies, there's been an enormous backlash online against the Norwegian Nobel committees, with some going as far as advocating for the abolishment of the Peace Prize altogether. Yup, the Nobel Prize appears to be suffering a legitimacy problem in the wake of this backlash, as many question how a Peace Prize could be presented to a supporter of regime change, economic sanctions, and ally herself with a regime that is committing genocide. That is who you chose, Nobel Committee. So, people might be wondering why the Nobel Prize is like this. Well, this is the CIA operative in and of himself, but I'll let him give some hints.
Nobel was the inventor of dynamite. That's how he made his money. So when you hear the name Nobel, you don't think about dynamite. He invented dynamite, hand grenades, howitzer rounds, and munitions. That was all Nobel. He took a huge chunk of his fortune and started the Nobel Peace Prize. Now you just think, oh my God, Barack Obama just won the, Dalai Lama just won the, Martin Luther King and won the, like, this guy made it off of dynamite.
That's insane.
Right?
But it makes sense because that's how evil are. They'll try to cover up what they're doing with
humanitarian work. Any questions? Have you heard the story of the start of the Nobel Prizes? Like, do you know the history of Alfred Nobel? So
no.
Luckily the Nobel Peace Prize like YouTube channel has it for us, right? So they can explain this nonsense. Right? So we'll let this little animation play.
How did the inventor of dynamite end up creating the Nobel Peace Prize? The answer may be a bit more complicated than you think. Alfred Nobel was born in Sweden in 1833. He learned at an early age that poverty and sickness could strike at any time. His father, Immanuel, went bankrupt twice in his lifetime. His mother, Henriette, gave birth to 8 children, but only 4 of them made it past childhood. At the age of 9, his family moved to Russia, where he spent most of his childhood. Alfred Nobel lived in a time of optimism and progress, with great advances in the fields of medicine and technology. But at the same time, wars and instability were commonplace. In his late teens, he went to France and the United States to study chemistry. He became interested in the potential of nitroglycerin, a highly explosive liquid. It took several years of experimenting before Alfred Nobel found how to transform the dangerous liquid into a malleable paste, making it easier to handle and safer to use. He named his invention dynamite. Dynamite was a revolution for the construction industry. Alfred Nobel was constantly working. He opened more than 100 factories in 20 countries, and by the end of his life, he held 355 patents in his name. He never married and had no children, so he could think differently when the time came to write his testament and decide what would happen to his fortune after his death. Maybe his money could support scientists, poets, and peacemakers. Alfred Nobel died in Italy in 1896. In his last will and testament, he wrote that most of his fortune was to be used to give out 4 prizes in Sweden in physics, chemistry, medicine, literature, and 1 in Norway, the Peace Prize. It has often been assumed that Alfred Nobel created the Peace Prize out of regret. But like many others in his time, he believed that scientists were not responsible for how their findings were used. His interest for peace came mostly from his friendship with Bertha von Suttner, an Austrian pacifist. Her novel Lay Down Your Arms was a huge success at the time. Contrary to Nobel, she believed strongly that the only way to peace was disarmament. The two friends would discuss, disagree, and challenge each other's views. And when Alfred Nobel eventually outlined the criteria for his Peace Prize, there was little doubt who had inspired him. Alfred Nobel's testament was the starting point for the Nobel Peace Prize. Since his death, the definition of peace itself has changed. Still, he had something in common with the Nobel laureates who came after him: curiosity, creativity, and the drive to be useful to others.
So, just a little history lesson for people. Dude was literally called the Merchant of Death, right? So, but, yeah, so meanwhile, they're talking about this lady and her wanting to give resources to the U.S. Well, I haven't heard anyone talk about this. So Dave DeCamp over at antiwar.com, right, writes Maduro offered the U.S. access to Venezuela's oil and mineral resources to avoid war. The government of Venezuela, President Maduro, has offered the U.S. access to Venezuela's oil, minerals, and other natural resources as part of a potential deal to avoid conflict. The report said talks on the potential deal went on for months, despite the U.S. increasing military pressure on Venezuela and bombing boats in the Caribbean, but they have ceased since President Trump recently ordered his special envoy, Rick Grenell, to halt diplomatic efforts with the Venezuelan government. This is, again, October 12th, right? So Maduro's government has also continued accepting deportation flights despite the military tensions. According to ICE Flight Monitor, a group that tracks deportation flights, since February, the U.S. has deported more than 10,000 Venezuelans on 58 flights, including 9 that landed since the U.S. bombed its first alleged drug-running boat in the Caribbean on September 2nd. An official family with the issue An official familiar with the issue told the Wall Street Journal last week that Venezuela remained one of the best relationships the U.S. has had on deportations. The Trump administration has permitted some trade with Venezuela by reinstating Chevron's license to pump oil in the country in July, but U.S. officials seem determined to escalate. Multiple media reports have said the U.S. is now considering launching direct airstrikes on Venezuelan territory and that the real U.S. goal is regime change, though it's being dressed up as a counter-narcotics operation. U.S. officials have claimed Maduro is the leader of a cartel, allegations that have been strongly denied by the government. Venezuelan officials have pointed to data that shows the majority of the cocaine that is produced in Colombia doesn't go through Venezuela. President Trump has framed the military campaign in the region as a response to overdose deaths in the U.S. due to fentanyl. But fentanyl isn't produced in Venezuela, and it does not go through the country on its way to the U.S. But this is October 14th, so yesterday, U.S. bombs another boat off the coast of Venezuela. Trump's claimed 6 narco-terrorists killed. The strike marks at least the 5th boat the U.S. has bombed in the region. So, yep, the admin has not presented any evidence to Congress to back up its allegations that the boat it's been bombing were carrying drugs. Yet, no proof has been put out. So they're just practically pure propaganda. So, but thoughts, Care Bear?
As you said, it's just funny now how the Nobel Peace Prize is going to warhawks.
Yeah. Yep. It's in the same vein, Vanessa Beeley, Palestine is only one issue, said Trump supporters. He is the president of peace, said Trump supporters. Trump didn't start any wars, said Trump supporters, right? As Trump calls off diplomatic outreach to Venezuela, right? So Fee replies, it wasn't just Trump supporters, but much of the mainstream alternative media, even now calling Trump a victim of Netanyahu rather than somebody that is part of the establishment and is sold out not to just Israel, but the entire Zionist supremacist global elite agenda. Couldn't have put it better myself. So, Jose Luis Grandos Ceja, Trump has authorized lethal operations by the CIA inside Venezuela. We're truly on the precipice of a worst-case scenario that could see the U.S. potentially try to assassinate a sitting president in Latin America. We need a regional response more than ever. So, yep, straight up Cold War assassination nonsense. So, any questions? Any additional statements? No? Cool. Yeah.
Well, the idea that Trump getting the Nobel Peace Prize is not that far-fetched, considering
who they gave it to. Like, it's practically the same shit, just a fucking toady. That's a good word. People should know that word. Toady. Toady's a great word. But talking about these things is why YouTube's demonetized us. So you can scan the QR code on your screen, go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, or, as always, links to donate are in the description below. And if you can't give monetarily, like and subscribe, share this video, send it to people. You never know what might happen. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Are we about to go to war with Venezuela? Let us know. Otherwise, thanks for watching.